everybody, Edo here, and the good folks at APE Games have sent me along an early copy of MOA by Martin Wallace. This was kickstarted earlier this year or last year, and much to Keith Mateka's surprise, I think this is actually the first Martin Wallace game I have played. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. I have London up here, I just haven't gotten to it, and so I checked this out. And so I'll add that from Keith's perspective, and he is a Martin Wallace aficionado, many of these mechanics seem to be mechanics he's used in other games in other ways. And so if I don't draw any of those lines or conclusions, I apologize. But MOA is a really thoughtful and interesting game and a very unique theme with the birds of MOA, and there's a big card here, a reference card, small text with what each bird is, and all the birds are on the player cards, and the art is really pretty awesome. It's sort of it's its own look, but as you're playing, I really dig the look and feel of this game, and the components are fantastic. So really nice implementation on theme and the idea of being these birds on these islands and being overthrown by the mammals as the mammals have come into it. So it took a long time for me to wrap my head around the mechanics of this game, and numerous plays to sort of get into it and grok it and really start enjoying the dynamics. There is a lot of cool stuff going on. At its heart, it's territory control with sort of a third-party influence. Third depends on the number of players, but a non-player influence coming into the world. So you have this region 1 through 12, and as players, you are working to score and put birds out in territories in order to have majority. And so at the end of it's played in 2 seasons or rounds or whatever, but at the end you're going to score and you're going to get points, victory points based on whether you're in first or second on majority. Now, players all start with a handful of these bird cards, and really the birds are all super cool, are not terribly relevant. What's relevant is their distribution of like icons and how many they have. So this one is 2 dagger or attack icons and 2 of the Karkia stars. This has 3 birds and 1 dagger, and so on and so forth. There's like theme and how the attacking birds has all the attacking power and stuff, but when you play this game, you're not looking at that. You're just looking at these. And so this is a hand management game where you are looking at your different cards to decide how you are going to use them to maximize when you do it. So the birds let you summon birds into the region. The blue leadership tokens let you upgrade birds to leader birds. The attack tokens are used to defend versus the mammals or attack the mammals, and if you're short on that, it's terrible, so you really want to make sure you have some of those. And the stars are used to buy special action tiles that are sort of in a marketplace. I have them off to the side here. And so you could use 1 a turn, but sometimes you want to use 2, sometimes you need to have a lot. So it's basically hand management, and the game's going to keep running through the deck of cards or half deck of cards, whether or not you have any remaining cards. So you could spend, first round, I could just be like, blam, I'm using you couldn't really do that, but you could get rid of a lot of them and have a number of rounds where you don't have anything going on. The other interesting dynamic in this territory control game is, so you have these cards, and this is familiar to me, albeit maybe not through Martin Wallace, but whatever. But I'm sure he has done this in other games, based on what Keith said. And the first player to get a leader in one of these regions gets these bonuses, so you're sort of trying to get into a new region. But what's interesting here is every turn, or round rather, you're going to flip over 2 cards. And these cards will indicate whether or not one of the mammals attack and what regions are in play. So there's only 2 types, like sort of desert and forest and grasslands and mountains and volcano, which you can play in based on this. You can't just go to any territory you want. It's somewhat restrictive in that way. And then there's this interesting thing where you're drawing these mammals, and as you draw them, they're coming into play, and then when the attack cards comes, they sweep in. So animals always sweeping in the first region. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it travels around the board, and basically when they come in, they attack any birds. And if the birds can overcome their attack value with your cards, starting with the majority player and going to the minority player, they like just take over and knock the players out, and then that guy's done. But then the next guy, because you could have like 4 stacks of enemies, just sweep through the land. You can defend them and build strongholds and do a number of things, but there's this sort of nice and interesting dynamic on how am I going to jockey against the other players and what's going to happen when they come through and we have to deal with these mammals. The other thing you can do is when a mammal's over here, rather than letting him attack you, you can say, hey mammal, I represent the birds of this land, of this region. Whether or not, you represent all players, but you pretend like you do, and you say, I will make a deal with you for victory points where I will just let you come in and take over. And so there's this interesting pressure where a player can essentially sell out the land, despite what the other players want, if that sort of the territory control feel is getting out of balance. It's a lot of interesting dynamic choices and decisions as you're playing through and you're getting a feel for how the game works. And I feel like scoring works. There's a couple things. One, like, what kind of reference card is that? Like, the instructions. These are the instructions. And but I don't know how much they could reduce it, because there's a lot of small little, like, well, if this is sort of happening in this, and this is the rule and off. So, like, there's a lot of little pieces that are like text-heavy rules you got to understand that are unique to this game and the way that it was designed. I don't love that. The other thing is, because you have to draw the cards to bring the creatures out before it happens, you can be in a couple games where you just like don't have any creatures, and then they do come out. It's got a weird flow in terms of when attacks happen and how they work. But you get used to it. It's just, you're sort of like, that's interesting. But, and the volcano is just a spot that, like, gets hotter and hotter, and then it's worth a lot of points, but then it can blow up and not be worth anything points. So it's like a push your luck spot, I guess. So, look, feel, this is fantastic. I actually really like it. I didn't at first, and it was, I had to wrap my head around it. It may be the case that if you're used to or have played other games by Martin Wallace, that a lot of this is second nature, and you're like, oh yeah, it's that thing and that thing and that thing. But if you haven't in the past, I think you're going to have to sort of wrap your head around it. And it's certainly, I think you could teach this, it says 10 plus. You could teach this to a 10-year-old, and the 10-year-old could play. I think this would be heavy duty for a 10-year-old to be handed the game and get through that rule book and understand what's going on. Even though it's not that big, there's just all of these like if-then statements in there. But anyway, MOA. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.